Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another episode of Jets Talk with Umbro and Tom O. It's your boy in the beanie, Mike Umbro, and next to me is Tom O'Connor here. Tom, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. Doing real good. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to all of you. Apologies for the lack of content in the past week and a half or so, obviously, with the holidays. We've been just trying to recoup with our family, our friends, girlfriends, whatever, and just taking some time to really wind down and, relax from work. So, things are back to normal now. It's a new year. Hopefully we see some bigger and better things. And, 2021, it's going to be a good one. And we're ready to start talking some Jets yet again. We're going to do things a little bit differently, though. So, obviously, it's the off season. The Jets are not in the playoffs. We are going to start talking about this coaching search. Tom, obviously, nothing but good things to say about the firing of Mr. Gase. That fucker.
Oh, we're thrilled.
We're thrilled.
It's about damn time. And he had to sneak out a couple more wins before he got fired, so...
Yeah, he's like, you know what? Fuck it. You guys aren't getting Trevor. It's whatever. Yep. Oh, man. But all those questions are going to be left for another day. Before we started talking draft or free agency or anything, obviously the head coach comes first. We're going to talk about some potential fits for the team and what to expect. We'll go over their bodies of work and what we can expect in terms of a culture shift, how it affects the team, how it affects Sam Darnold, how it affects the number 2 overall pick. So these will be pretty short, sweet, and simple. So with that being said, we're going to start with everybody's hot candidate, Eric Bieniemy, who's the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs currently. So, Tom, we're going to jump into his body of work here and, talk about, what to expect when it comes to that. So, as a coach, he started off at the University of Colorado as an RB coach. He did that from 01 to 02. Running backs coach at UCLA from 2003 to 2005. Running back coach from 2006 to 2009 for the Minnesota Vikings. And then he was the assistant head coach in 2010 and the running backs coach. Went back to Colorado for a year as the OC and has been with Kansas City ever since. He was the running backs coach from 13 to 17, and then in 18 he became the OC for KC, and obviously you can see the work that they've done on offense ever since with Patty Mahomes at the helm. So obviously, first things first, what are we making of that body of work, and how do you think that transitions into becoming an actual head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that you said, he's done a lot. He's been a running back coach quite a bit and with some pretty solid programs. Like Colorado's a great program. And then obviously Minnesota Vikings. At that time, I believe he actually was working with Adrian Peterson. So pretty cool. Now, one thing that actually was kind of interesting was a kind of a fun fact. He was the offensive coordinator, like you said, for Colorado. Right. He actually played football at Colorado. He was a running back there. He actually got banned from Colorado's campus in 2001 he was getting arrested. He had a DUI. He had all these different things.
What?
And I'm being dead serious. And then
my God.
Back in 2011, they lifted the ban and he became the offensive coordinator. So that's actually his story, I guess, with Colorado, University of Colorado, which I thought was very interesting. But I mean, the guy's got experience. He's been around for a while. He was, an ex-player himself. He knows the game. He knows football, and being on where he's at now, he's on the Chiefs. You know what I mean? He knows how to win.
He knows how to win. Here's my question, though. Obviously, being a running back coach for so long and, it doesn't necessarily scream, I know how to make a quarterback really good. I don't know how to develop a quarterback. Not that I'm actually saying that because of how Patrick Mahomes has played and obviously Alex Smith years before. But does that scare you at all when it comes to him having a more niche specialty when it comes to running backs? Or do you think he's so far gone at this point just as an OC that it doesn't matter?
I definitely think it's a concern. I don't necessarily think it's a bad or a giant concern, right? Like clearly he's done a very good job of grooming Patrick Mahomes. But with that being said, if you look back at, the different running backs he's worked with and those teams he was on, they were run first teams. And that's something that the Jets are. So it's not like, it's not something that's necessarily bad. But yeah, I definitely do think it matters.
Okay. Now, with that being said, what kind of culture can we expect? Obviously the Chiefs have had a winning culture for quite some time. Is he the guy to come in and turn this culture from, guys basically screaming and yelling their way off the team to, forcing trades, superstar players not getting along with the head coach to, a consistent winner, guys who can, rely on their head coach to be a leader amongst men? Like what kind of culture can we expect?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I mean, he comes from a winning culture. I mean, literally all he's done since he's been in the NFL is win games. Every team he's been on. So he definitely brings that culture. He's got a great personality too. I think the players really respect him. And I think that's goes a really long way, especially in today's NFL.
I totally agree. And, obviously winning culture is what the Jets need. Now, the question is, because the ongoing thing with the head coach search, right? We need a CEO of a guy. We don't want just an offensive specialist. We don't want a guy who just specializes on defense or special teams. We want a guy who can come in, know how to delegate, know how to really run a team, lead men, all the cliches in the world. Obviously, Eric Bieniemy is more of an offensive guru, but do you see him as a guy who can come in and delegate and do all of these things and lead the entire 53-man roster as opposed to just the 20 or so on offense?
It's hard for me to say. And I think the reason that is because I am obviously he's the offensive coordinator at the Chiefs, but I want to know a little bit more about his role and what he's done so well in terms of grooming, Patrick Mahomes and making that offense so effective. And like you said, delegating all those other jobs as well. My big thing is that, for somebody that's not necessarily calling the plays right now for a team that he's the offensive coordinator on, I think it's hard to necessarily delegate all the jobs properly. He's not even doing that specific thing himself on game day. That's just kind of my take on it. I had a decent amount of cons for him, to be honest with you, after looking into it a little bit more and really doing my research. So at first I was like, the Jets got to get this guy. The Jets got to get this guy. And honestly, I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards away from that.
Okay, so leading into the pros and cons part of, our dive into Eric Bieniemy here. You mentioned his, and I guess this is one of your cons. Can he lead and delegate for a 53-man roster as opposed to just the offense, right? I take it that's one of your cons and obviously one of your question marks. What are the other question marks that you had coming into this? Like, give me, including that, I guess, 3 cons, and then give me 3 pros of having Eric Bieniemy as your head coach.
Yeah, we'll start with the pros. He learned from a Hall of Fame coach. Like, that's what Andy Reid is. It's a great coaching tree. So you really can't take that away from him. You just get experience from a guy like that. But he's also been in an advanced offense. He's been in an offense that does so much. They really just know how to win. And he saw this dynasty kind of getting built, and that's really what the Chiefs are becoming, is a dynasty. So right. To hammer down that winning culture, he's seeing this, and it's so important. And he's just won a lot of football games. He's a winner, and you really can't take that from anybody. But one thing really, we touched on the play calls in terms of cons. We touched on the fact that he's not calling plays. One thing that I really was kind of looking into as well was his actual stats last time he did call plays, which was actually for the not the Buffalo Bills, for the Colorado Buffaloes. That's where I got confused. In 2011 to 2012, he was the offensive coordinator. In 2011, their team was 109th in points scored, 92nd in the country in total yards. And then in 2012, they actually took a step back and they went 120th in points, 119th in total yards. So like, he showed no progress going into the second year of calling plays at a school. I just, to be honest, don't trust him going into a system where they really don't have a ton of studs on offense as it is. Again, he's the head coach. He's got a lot of different things to do, but right. That's my big thing, is his specialty. I'm not sure that he is that amazing at his specialty, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So basically you're saying he should be really good at calling plays by now, but record at Colorado shows the last time, at least on paper, he had the opportunity to call the plays. He didn't do too hot, and he actually ended up taking steps backward with Colorado.
And with that being said, I would say with that being said, obviously that was 9-10 years ago, right? He's now learned, he's groomed himself, and he's learned from a Hall of Fame coach. So I don't want to take that away from him, but that was just my observations from my research.
Yeah, of course. And listen, at the end of the day, this is what Joe Douglas is going to be doing too. You know, what we're doing on steroids. He's going to be digging into his background, digging into, you know, his record as an offensive coordinator, where they're ranked, like what kind of offense he ran, like his vision for the talent on that team, his vision for the Chiefs, his vision for the Jets, more importantly. Now, the final thing is, obviously, we know Patrick Mahomes is a stud. However, that's going to be 50% at the very least on Andy Reid and his ability to coach him up. And at the very least, 50% on Eric Bieniemy. Can't count out the QB coach as well. What does Eric Bieniemy need to do as an HC to, you know, like what kind of offensive coordinator is he going to need to bring in? Who's he going to try and bring in on defense? Because I have a feeling this is going to be an Adam Gase type of deal where Adam coaches offense, you know, DC coaches defense. Eric Bieniemy will probably focus a majority of his time on the offensive side of the ball. Granted, the Jets do need to score points way more consistently and way more just period. However, is that the kind of guy you want leading this team at the moment? Or do you want more?
No.
Okay. And I totally agree. So what we're basically hearing is Eric Bieniemy, as much as he's grown into his role with the Chiefs, we're not 100% sure he's ready to make that step and delegate OC, DC, coach a 53-man roster, as well respected as he is around the league. We're just not 100% sure if he's done enough even on the offensive side of the ball to earn his keep even in that niche. He's not exactly a Sean McVay. He's not exactly a Frank Reich, right? So overall, you know, we're not 100% sure if he's the guy. So if you had to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, what would that be? I'm going to go ahead and go, yeah. All right. I totally agree. We do have a couple more things to cover, though, with Bieniemy and how that affects the team. So first and foremost, right, Sam Darnold is the current Jets quarterback. For how much longer? That is TBD. So, Tom, give me a little bit of insight on what you think happens with Sam Darnold if Eric Bieniemy is the head coach of the Jets.
It's tough because I think that, you know, they're not going to necessarily hire him if he doesn't want to do what they want to do with Sam Darnold, to be honest with you. Like I think Joe Douglas will kind of do what he wants to do for a first-year head coach. Obviously, it'll be in conversation. But if you're Eric Bieniemy, I think the only thing he's going to want is his own quarterback. I mean, he's seen it with the Chiefs again to go back there. As soon as they got their guy, look what they turned into. And, you know, especially with new head coaches, if you don't get your guy within 3 years, if you don't have your guy on the roster already, you're gone. Yeah,
and I totally agree. I have a feeling that, and this kind of coincides with how this affects the number 2 overall pick as well. So we both agree in the fact that Sam Darnold will most likely not be a Jet if Eric Bieniemy is on the team. So if not Sam Darnold, who is his guy? Is it Justin Fields? Is it Zach Wilson? Is it Trey Lance? Does he wait a little bit? Or is it Mac Jones? You know, who's the best quarterback for what, you know, we've seen Eric Bieniemy accomplish on offense with the Chiefs, which is most likely going to try to be transitioned over here to New York.
Yeah, so I mean, we hear a lot of people saying Zach Wilson, but honestly, I think it is going to go back to Ohio State and Justin Fields. I mean, he played really well last week in a playoff game, and he's playing in the national championship, so it is going to be decided on Monday. And I really think that's going to have a massive impact on where he does go, because he was falling in a lot of boards. But the performance he put up, he really was going through his progressions, like we've talked about in other videos in the past. He was going through his progressions. He had 6 touchdown passes. He looked like a stud. So I think that's the guy right now.
But is that Eric Bieniemy's guy, though? Is Justin Fields the
Yes.
guy who's going to mold, who's going to fit into what his style is?
I do believe so.
You do think so?
Yeah.
So for me, I think because I'm going to disagree and go with Zach Wilson, only because for Eric Bieniemy, Patrick Mahomes' arm strength makes it all work. In my eyes, as much as Justin Fields impressed, I'll touch that in a minute, but Zach Wilson has the better arm. His arm talent is, I'd say, a full step much better than Justin Fields. Justin Fields' mechanics still kind of scare me a little bit. Wilson can get the ball downfield with the flick of a wrist. It's not exactly Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen arm strength, but it is very above average. I will give him that. And he is mobile enough to make some plays. Granted,
Definitely.
we both don't like the build and we both don't like the injury history with Zach Wilson, but I think in terms of a fit, I think he's mobile enough with a big enough arm to make it work with what Eric Bieniemy would want to accomplish on offense. But that's just my take. Going back to Justin Fields, though, just for a quick second, I had a lot of questions about Justin Fields, and the way he played against Clemson, I got to take my cap off. I'm not going to, but that was some performance. To take a lick to the ribs like that, play throughout the entire game in pain, then to come back, throw 6 touchdown passes, go through progressions. He was forced to throw the football, and he did really well. He also moved around relatively well, even though you could tell that he was in a lot of pain. So he showed a lot of toughness. He showed a lot of moxie. He showed a lot of accuracy, and he did, show the ability to go through progressions. Still a little bit slower than what I would have liked, but at least now you're starting to see it. Now, my thing is it enough to overtake Trevor Lawrence? No. Is it enough to potentially be taken at number 2? Potentially. Here's my thing. Because Justin Fields, you can tell he's a leader and you can tell he's a winner, regardless of what his mechanics are throwing the ball. I don't know if you're familiar with the show QB1 on Netflix. You are. Dude, I watched him, throughout the course of that show. That man is a true leader. You can tell. And he's a true baller. And he's not very rah leader. He's like, listen, man, that ball is in your hands. You need to catch that. Like, he's holding everybody accountable. And I think that's the kind of leader that Joe Douglas likes. So I'm not saying that anything's going to happen, but I won't be mad. If Justin Fields can improve those mechanics and improve that arm strength a little bit and show that he can improve in terms of going through progressions, if it's Joe Douglas's guy, it's my guy too. So that's kind of where I stand at the moment. But overall, that's going to be kind of the impact that we both see from Eric Bieniemy. But overall, we're just not 100% sure if he's the right head coach for the Jets. But with that, that's actually going to do it for this episode. The next profile is actually going to be Brian Daboll, who's the offensive coordinator for the Bills. So we're looking forward to getting that out to you guys as well. Tom, any final words on Mr. Bieniemy?
No. I mean, really, the guy's got a great track record. I don't want to take anything from him, but I don't think he's the guy for the Jets.
All right. Well, I don't either. Go Jets, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, guys.